Now, I know this is the part of the sermons that you hear that you don't want to hear. Amen? This might be a good time to get up and go get a glass of water or go to the restroom, because nobody wants to hear that what you're going through is actually in the hands of God and going to be used for good. We don't want to hear that. The Bible teaches very clearly that it is. In fact, I want to give you just a couple of good things that can happen because of your trial and tribulation this morning. And only a couple. In fact, online I'm going to post about 10, so you can go online and research them in depth. But here's a couple. Number one, when you go through hard times, it exposes your sin. It makes you see your sin. And listen, hard times make us hate sin even more. We're all like a cup of water that looks real nice and clear, but in the bottom there's a bunch of sediment. And when that cup gets hit, that sediment gets stirred up. And all of a sudden you're like, whoa, you don't want to drink that. That's bad water. Well, guess what? That's how our lives are. Man, we're going on, everything looks good. And then all of a sudden, boom, hard times hit us. And all of that hidden sin gets stirred up. And all of a sudden, we have to get honest with our condition, honest with ourselves. We get to see sin and taste sin and are reminded of how bad it is. When hard times hit, we get a personal lesson on how bad sin is, how corrupt we are, how cursed we are, and we hate it even more. Amen? Don't you go through hard times and you look at it and you just hate it? And you know part of it's probably your own fault, part of it is probably somebody else's fault, part of it could be just this society that we're in, right? And we start getting, and it's like we realize that the sin that started with Adam and Eve has so corrupted us that we all just get, we see it afresh and anew, and we hate our sin. And guess what? I believe that's why God allows hard times in our life. Number two, I believe that God's grace that comes into our life when we suffer hard times increases our compassion. It increases our compassion for others. And what I mean by that is, I know in this room, we as Southern Californians, many of us have bad mortgages, right? Our houses are upside down. We're out of work. We haven't had a paycheck, some in a long time. Some can't buy that new car that they need, or go on a vacation, or even buy, by the way, the used car that you might want to buy. Or you want to put your kids in those sports programs or after-school programs, but you don't have the extra funds to do it. And some of you want to retire, and some of you have tried to retire. Some of you actually been retired, and now you're back working again because you can't afford to retire, right? And all of us are paying higher taxes, too high a taxes. Can I get an amen? But guess what? Did you know that 3 billion people in the world get paid less than $2.50 a day? 3 billion people in the world get paid less than $2.50 a day. And they're starving. And they're hurting. And there's children today that'll have no food, no shelter, no medicine. And there's something about when we go through hard times as believers, as Christians, those hard times, because the grace of God is being poured out upon us, and God is working in us, and we're drawing closer to God, and we're seeing everything differently, and we're starting to appreciate everything more. It's as if in those hard times our compassion for others grows. We get our eyes off of ourselves and onto others. We begin to understand when others have pain and problems in their life. We listen differently. We can relate. We understand. We're more apt to reach into our pocket and give our last dollar to someone because we've been there. And so therefore God allows these hard times. He don't see them as bad. He sees them as good. And then third, I believe that God allows hard times in our life because It causes us to trust in God's sufficiency. You see, over and over in the Bible, over and over again, the Bible gives us stories of where God advances his mission work in the world when human resources have run out. When you can't trust in our resources and in our power, and man finally says, I can't do this. The walls of that city are too high. The armies are too great. The water in that river is too deep. On and on, the Bible gives these stories. And it's at that moment that people turn to God, and we're reminded of God's sufficiency. Amen? That it's all about God. And the day that we ever thought we were doing any of it in our power, we were wrong. It's any success we've ever had, anything we've ever done. Really, is it us? Or is it God in us? And hard times help remind us of the true answer to that question.